I like to write because it usually takes a bunch of my emotions that are bound up into a tightly packed ball, and I can pull away the strings from that and sort it out. And then from there, I will typically find nuggets of wisdom, and then I will write about it, and I'll try to convey it in a way where someone else can determine whether or not my experience is wisdom to them. I've had a pretty interesting life, all in all. My background has always been pretty rough. I wouldn't say that I have the worst existences, but I would say that I've been blessed with a lot of hardships. And the reason why I say blessed is because I believe that every hardship that we face is an opportunity to learn how to help someone else. And one of the greatest blessings that I've ever had, which was the gift of cancer. And I was granted the opportunity to have a really interesting cancer that's called neuroendocrine cancer. And this one is really neat because it is a cancer that does something more than just having that roommate who eats all your food and destroys all your stuff. It still does all of those things, but it's like they bring home cats all the time, and the cats are running wild throughout the house. Now, objectively, I have a really cool kind of cancer. Subjectively, it's not really that fun. And anyone who has it would tell you it's not a super awesome cancer to have. And luckily, I don't think that I have it as bad in many respects on a day-to-day than what some of my peers have had and who I have met and interacted with. And it's relatively rare kind of cancer, but it exists more than we think it is. And that's because, from what I understand, a lot of the celebrities who have had my cancer have been gobbled up by like the Pancreatic Society. And so like people like Steve Jobs and Aretha Franklin and then Dave Thomas, the guy who owned Wendy's, they all have the same family of cancer that I have, and it's called neuroendocrine cancer. No, my cancer was specifically pulmonary neuroendocrine cancer, and that means that it started off in the lung. And from the research that I've done in regard to my own cancer, the area where it starts, that primary location, determines a lot of the symptoms that you'll experience pretty much indefinitely. And so like with the pulmonary one, what it does is it synthesizes serotonin and histamines. Now, this is where the disease gets really cool. And it's really cool because it is a cancer that functions in essence like a gland, and it will create these excess hormones that make your life relatively miserable in certain respects. So the serotonin, you would be like, oh, that's great. Well, then you're always like in a good mood, because people would say, well, serotonin, that's a good thing to have because it's a mood regulator. It's going to help you be happier and all this jazz. But serotonin exists in two areas of our body predominantly. It's going to exist in our brain, and it's going to be synthesized by an area called your raphe nuclei in your midbrain. And from here, it comprises about 10% of the serotonin that's in your body. The other place that it's synthesized is going to be your endochromaffin-like cells, and they're going to be in your gut. And so that comprises about 90% of your serotonin. And they're used for two different functions. So the serotonin that's in your body isn't going to pass through the blood-brain barrier and vice versa. So it's not really going to have a big impact, as far as I understand in lay speak, with like your mind state or what have you. From what I've read and understood about high levels of serotonin is it can cause you to have a numerous BMs in a day. And I know people who have to navigate their path wherever it is that they go because they want to make sure that they can use the restroom because their body is malfunctioning to such a degree. Other instances, it can make it where you have like a sense of like tinnitus, like a whining sound in your ear. And then some of the other things that it will do is it can take apart your heart valves, and then in the bigger picture can cause, from what I understand, systemic organ failure. So luckily, I don't think that I have all those problems, but sometimes whenever I eat certain foods, it really jacks me up, and so that messes with what I can and what I cannot eat. And if I eat too much of one thing because I forget that I shouldn't, or I become pulled into eating something that I really love but I really shouldn't be, then I pay the price with like vomiting and so forth the next day, and that's not particularly nice. So, and then the other part, which is I get hit pretty hard with, is the histamines, and I start wheezing. Now, that's uncomfortable because whenever I was diagnosed with this, I had to get my lung removed, and they had to remove the big lung. So that makes it where it's like having, like asthma combined with one little lung, and that makes life pretty challenging in a lot of different respects. So, you look at life, and there's a lot of hardship, no matter which way that you look at it. Sometimes, I'll tell my story to people about how I had had cancer, had my lung removed. I went through a chemotherapy that I don't really feel was irrelevant. It doesn't matter, but on a really hardcore chemotherapy. And that messed me up. I mean, it messed me up for years and years, and it made life really difficult to navigate. And not just like the damage caused from the chemotherapy of existing with, peripheral neuropathy for a long time, but also in the respect of like, whenever I went through chemotherapy, I had to eat like 20 sandwiches or 20 meals a day in order to keep something down because I was so nauseous and I would throw up so much. And so I'd have to eat so much in order just to eat one meal. And as a result, it kind of created like a food aversion to food. And so sometimes whenever I'm hungry, I can't feel it, or I get hungry for like a really short window of time, and then quickly my mind says, no, don't eat, it's going to hurt you. And I'm like, dude, I got to eat. And then it just takes away that hunger. And then I'll go throughout the day until finally like my body is like screaming at me because it's starving. And it says, Sean, dude, you got to eat. And I'm like, well, come on, just give me the heads up before this so that I can eat. But, it's a complicated emotional matter. Whenever you have that fear, that deep-rooted fear that you can't even see, that's saying, no, don't eat because it's going to hurt you, while all the same time, knowing that you have to eat and that your body is eating itself and at the same time. So the existence of life is fascinating. And even though these things are terrible and they're not fun to exist within, they are still blessings, because going back to what I had said earlier, which is that every hardship we face is an opportunity to learn how to help someone else. And even whenever I was going through chemotherapy, there's something that I learned. That was like in that trial, that really big trial, I realized it from the very beginning. I was hanging out with my friend Jamie, and we were in her martial arts studio, and I was telling her about what was going to happen. And I said, well, I think this is going to make me a better massage therapist. It's going to make me, I think it's going to make me a better person, because I can use these hurt to help other people's hurt. And as time went on, that understanding of life, it developed and it matured, and I was able to really look at all the horrors that I have faced and learn how to use them in an applicable way that can benefit other people. One of the other big things that the cancer journey did for me was it gave me a deeper appreciation for life and death. And mind you, before getting cancer, I still had I had a respect for death, but not in the same way, because whenever you're faced with the pretty much a very high certainty that you're going to die, or that the medicine that they're giving you may kill you, or a sickness that you get while you're on the medicine can kill you, or that you might die on the operating table, or your life may be shortened due to the illness itself, you're faced with the very reality of your own mortality. And for me, I think the real, like, the woe is me moment, I think that lasted for like 30 seconds. And I was like, okay, well, let's continue forward. And that was cool. Mourning, you have to mourn your own life when you face these kinds of circumstances. But there's different parts of your life you have to mourn. Like realizing that you're probably going to die when there was about a 20% chance of dying when on the operating table, and another 20% chance of dying like the 30 days afterwards. That kind of stuff I think is relatively, when you're already in a lot of pain, and I was whenever, I was facing down that barrel of my pneumonectomy to have my lung removed. When you're already in that degree of pain, it just makes sense. You're like, well, I got to do it or I'm going to die. Or I'm going to do it, more specifically, something a little bit more tangible. I can either live this way until I do die, or I can do this surgery and maybe die. So, well, like, I'm already in a lot of pain. I'm coughing up blood everywhere I go. I can barely breathe. My body feels like I got the flu all the time. And the pain is so high, it makes me feel like I'm going crazy. There'd be moments where I'd have like panic attacks, and I didn't know why. I mean, the stress levels of my life during that time were relatively high, but they weren't so high that they should be deconstructing my mind state. And so that was a blessing. So gave me a reason to understand what was going on. And so the blessings component was, I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be in those moments where you're like, look, dude, you may very well be fucked. Your life may be over. So what do you do? And what I did in that circumstance was that when I was talking to the surgeon, he was like, well, when he told me, he says, well, Mr. Rod, we got bad news. We got to remove your whole lung. And I was like, oh crap, that sucks. When you hear that kind of stuff, you don't quite register it well, but it registered with me long enough or strong enough when the doctor's like, well, when do you want to come in? And I was like, well, what time? Because I'm expecting it to be like months out whenever he said this. And he was like, well, we can get you on Thursday. And I was like, well, it's Tuesday, I am not going to go under the knife and possibly die in like 2 or 3 days. That's ridiculous. Because there's a value to life. There's a value to life. I'm not going to go from being in pain, terror, then be sliced open, and then life be over. So I was like, yeah, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do this surgery in a couple of days. We're going to wait. We're going to wait at least 2 weeks. And he's like, well, we need to really get it in. And I'm like, do we really? I mean, because you said that this is a pretty slow-growing cancer. Do we really need to get it in right now? Because as a master of my own life, I don't think it is. I want to be able to go out and enjoy myself a little bit before I go in and you slice into my body and me maybe not recover. So he didn't like it so much, but I didn't give two shits. And so then those next 2 weeks, they were beautiful. I was willing to do things I would have otherwise never been willing to do. And it led me down a beautiful path of meeting some amazing people and really just, celebrating life to its maximum. And that way, whenever I went under the knife, even though it was going to be horrible, and it was the true definition of awe-inspiring pain and absolute horror, terror, and just devastating agony, it gave me a chance to celebrate life. And I think that a big part of that really, that idea that you need to take some time before you're facing the inevitability of death. If you know it's coming down the pipe, you need to take time to celebrate it with the things and people that are most important. And I drew a lesson from my mother when she had passed away. And my mom, she passed away from pancreatic cancer, and she was in a lot of pain. But what she taught me was what hope actually is. And what hope is it's not surviving. Everyone gets this idea in their mind that, I'm going to hope I'm going to survive and I'm going to live pain-free. No, hope is not that. Hope is so much more than that. Hope is making the most of your moments and celebrating your seconds with the special people of your life. And my mother, what she did towards the end of her life, she was in absolute agony. She couldn't walk, or if she did, she barely did, and she was in a wheelchair, and she had jaundice, and all messed up. But she created a cruise, and on this cruise, she took the whole family, and we had one big hurrah and a goodbye. And then a few weeks later, we came back after the or maybe it might have been that week itself, or a few days later. It's hard to remember whenever you think about those hard moments, but it was pretty quick after after we came back from the cruise. I was able to sit next to her and be with her as she passed away, and that was beautiful. And later, whenever I faced the cancer, I was like, hope is making the most of these moments. I don't have to get it right now. I'm not going to die right now. So let's set this off for a time so that I can remember what it was like to live. And so that's what I did. That was a big thing that I learned. And that's something that I think that we all should adopt into our life to some degree, which is look at the seconds we have. Instead of focusing on surviving all the time, be like, okay, let's invest our time into love. Like real love, not this selfish crap that we are inundated with all day long, where we're on our cell phones or chatting away on Facebook or just doing garbage activities that the propaganda and programming of society tell you to do. Because the meaning of life is very simple. The meaning of life is just relationships. And if you're just living inwardly and thinking about, I need to survive, that's life. And if that's going to be your life, then you've wasted your seconds on this earth. Absolutely wasted it, because we're all going to die. We're all going to die. So use that as a motivator. Use it as a force to convince you to do something significant. And that's really what my cancer journey did for me. I looked over my life after I got out of the hospital and had my lung removed, and I was like, I wasted my life. What have I really accomplished with my existence? Sure, there's people who like me. Sure, there's people who like what I've created or written. They like to be around me. I make them laugh, blah, blah, blah. But really, at the end of the day, what have I really done? And that's when I decided, I said, I need to leave behind a legacy. And since at this point I have no kids, I don't have young ones to run around and be like, that symbolize my existence and my absence, and they carry my word on. I needed to create something that would outlive me. But specifically, the legacy isn't about me. I wanted to create something that existed beyond what my lifespan was, and made it so that I could make the world a better place than how I found it. And even if they don't remember my name, that's okay, because the world is better. Because other people's lives have been enriched by the investment that I made in them and in my life. So what am I here to do? What is this podcast all about? What is my message? I'm here to share with you the things that I've learned, to walk through the journeys that I've experienced, and hopefully you can pick something out of what I say that can be wisdom in your life. That's a part of my legacy. I want to do something meaningful. And I know everyone else in the world wants to do something meaningful, but it's a matter of finding what it is that is true to you and pursuing it. And I know deep in my heart there is this burning fire that says, I need to help people. And that's a big reason why I created the spas. I got involved with like non-for-profits and trying to create fundraisers that can engage and educate, and why I like talking to other massage therapists and trying to inspire them how to make the most of their career and really understand what it's like to live the life of a healer. I really love people, and I really love life. And my journey has allowed me to understand the full gamut of the human existence, from the most beautiful, unbelievable bliss to the most terrifying, horrifying pain imaginable. And this has been, once again, another beautiful blessing. So I've dabbled around quite a bit with the different kinds of content that I want to create, but I think that where I need to be is really diving into the things that really care about, that I really care about, and the things that I think are really valuable. And some of the things that I think are really valuable is this relationship with life and death, understanding what hope is, understanding what romance is, really diving into the divine masculine and the divine feminine, helping young men find their way because they're so lost. And the dance between men and women is gone. We barely even know how to talk to each other. And as I like to say, when it comes to dating and it comes to relationships, I say that dating is like fencing and relationships are like dancing, but ultimately we don't know how to do either. And we have all these sources on the internet telling us all this random gibberish. Most people just trying to make money off of you or prey upon your weaknesses. Another big thing that I see in society is this pathological drive for independence. The world wants to make you think that you can do it alone, but you can't. None of us can. We are here. Our purpose in life is to experience and explore relationships. And at its core, that's what I am completely about, helping people make the most of their moments, celebrating their seconds, understanding the value of sacrifice, as well as being able to analyze what level of sacrifice we need to make in specific instances. I want to help you see that. I want to help you see inwardly into yourself to understand what makes you you. Show you the steps that I've taken to understand who I am so that maybe you can take from that primer and build your own story and write your own path so that you can live your greatest life, so that you can have a life that was better than mine, so that you can explore those exquisite moments and have wonderful experiences and really cherish the people of your life. That's the goal of all of this. That's the goal. That's the purpose of my life, is to help, to be of service, to enrich the world and leave it better than I found it.